After the first game of the season, Danny, there seems to be a little feeling in the air that some Hawkeye fans can just take a deep breath and relax.
However, not too deep of a breath yet, as we remember last year's game. I know I do.
Definitely, and there's obviously some unfinished business left between Iowa and Iowa State. This field goal from last year was a 42-yard field goal for Iowa State to come back and beat Iowa 20-17. They came back from a 14-3 deficit, so that was absolutely insane.
Now, Taylor, there are some questions answered in Iowa's opener last week. However, there are still some that remain.
You know, in that season opener, Danny, there were 7 Hawkeyes who made their first career start, and that list compiled of running back LaShawn Daniels Jr., left tackle Boone Myers, defensive end Nathan Bujada, defensive tackle Jaleel Johnson, linebackers Cole Fisher and Ben Neiman, and strong safety Miles Taylor.
Even with all these new starters, there were a few who were underestimated before and after the game.
Exactly, Danny, and I took a look specifically at the linemen and the tackle who played their part and played it well.
They say in order to play Iowa football,
you got to be able to tackle to play here.
And the tackles that came from these linemen on both sides of the ball did.
Excellent job.
Great job blocking.
That's impressive.
Let's start on the offensive side. Left tackle Boone Myers and right tackle Ike Bodiger now combined for 3 starts under their belt instead of just 1.
We were, what's the word I'm looking for? Maybe, concerned. You're always concerned when guys haven't played.
But holding them together is center Austin Blythe. All in all, he's the glue of this offensive line.
That's who we want to be. We want to be a power football team, and we want to drive guys off the ball.
But the performances of Meyer and Bodiger didn't go unnoticed in the season opener. The 2 and help from the other offensive tackles allowed Iowa to rush 210 yards and did not allow a sack against Illinois State.
The quality of those guys, the way they think, their integrity levels, their work ethic.
Just kind of got more comfortable in there.
Hopefully that offensive line keeps their feet on the ground for game 2. Now, the defensive side of the ball. The glue for these linemen is obviously Drew Ott. There's no question asked about that one. But Jaleel Johnson and Nate Bujada are racking up the tackles as well. Johnson with 4 and Bujada with 3 from the season opener.
For the first time, those guys played when it counted. Both Nathan and Jaleel did a nice job.
With a man like Ott leading this pack, there's no wonder these defensive linemen are already stepping up their game.
He's really been going hard ever since he got here, but he just is growing as a football player.
Stepping up their game is something that all of the linemen need to continue as the season gets further and further along. And in the words of head coach Kirk Ferentz,
you can always get better. I mean, every player can get better.
Oh, the classic words of head coach Kirk Ferentz.
Certainly could have predicted what he was going to say there.
Definitely. But from this Iowa State and Iowa game, there seems to be a lot that's going to be at stake this week. And to break it down for us, we will send it over to Ian Murphy and Laura Belanda standing by. Guys? Thanks, Danny and Taylor. Definitely a lot to determine in this Cy-Hawks series, but it may come down to one matchup in the trenches.
That's right, Laura. Iowa State's Jake Campos versus Iowa's Drew Ott.
Campos, a 6'8", 297-pound redshirt sophomore, drew the honor of matching up against Ott on Saturday.
And Iowa State head coach Paul Rhodes.
He's elusive. He can move on his feet, so he has the ability to make big plays or turn broken plays into big plays. So we're gonna have to contain him.
And Iowa State head coach Paul Rhodes had this to say: "I think that's a good matchup. Jake certainly has to be motivated because Ott's one of the best in the country. Absolute best in the country, and Jake's going to have his hands full."
In 2014, Campos was first-team All-Big 12 and started Iowa State's final 11 games as a redshirt freshman. Meanwhile, Ott's resume needs no refreshing. The senior posted 2 sacks in Iowa's win over Illinois State and was named to multiple preseason watch lists.
But there's obviously more to a big game than just that matchup. We took a look at a few stats in this week's By the Numbers.
The average margin of victory since 2010 in Cy-Hawk Trophy games is just 3.75 points. The average yards per carry for Iowa against Iowa State is just 4.8 yards. And last year, Iowa State threw a total of 11 interceptions against Iowa. Their quarterback, Sam Richardson, is 6'2", 217 pounds. He's a third-year starter, and after last year, he records 3,000 yards in total offense. But he's led the Cyclones to a record of 0-15 against Big 12 teams. And now for the black and gold, CJ Beathard. This is his first year as the main starter at the quarterback position. He recorded 8 carries for 26 yards in the home opener against Illinois State with 2 touchdowns, and his arm was on point too, with 62.5% completion rate. The Cyhawks series dates back to 2004, with Iowa State leading Iowa with 6 titles to 5.
Richardson led the Cyclones to a season-opening victory, 31-7 over the UNI Panthers.
But with a new man in the pocket for the Hawkeyes, hopefully they can turn the tables on Saturday. Now, Danny and Taylor, what's the rest of the Big Ten looking like?
The Big Ten had their moments in the first week, but first we start with the East Division.
Starting off at 1-0 is Indiana, who beat Southern Illinois in a close game, 48-47. Maryland also off to a winning start when they pushed past Richmond 50-21.
Next, the powerhouse of Ohio State fended off Virginia Tech, even though going into halftime, Virginia Tech was winning. Continuing down the line is the mighty green and white of Michigan State, who beat Western Michigan 37-24.
Rutgers stomped powerhouse Norfolk State 63-13. Michigan wasn't able to pull off the win with their new and former Iowa quarterback Jake Rudock when they lost to Utah 24-17.
And finishing up the East Division is Penn State, who got trampled by Temple 27-10. Obviously a lot coming from that first division, and it'll be very interesting how Michigan goes into week 2.
How Michigan goes in week 2, and if anybody's going to beat Ohio State as well.
Yep, well now let's head to the West.
Despite firing their coach 8 days before the season opener, Illinois comes out on top of Kent State, demolishing them 52-3.
Next is Iowa proving their worth, beating Illinois State, but the big talk is Northwestern, who upset Stanford 16-6.
Minnesota Golden Gophers with a tough loss to number 2 TCU, and Nebraska getting upset the last second by BYU, 33-28.
Closing up the West Division is Purdue, who suffered a season opener loss to Marshall. And finally, poor Wisconsin with a loss to the Crimson Tide, 35-17.
A quick note for next week's game against Iowa State. Of course, with the loss of Tyler Satch earlier this week, Iowa's going to pull one of the Tiger Hawks off their helmet, wear Satch's number 9 as a tribute.
That's an incredible tribute that Iowa will be doing, and we will have all the highlights and the recaps from that Iowa State-Iowa game in Ames for the Sunday edition of the show. But for now, back to you guys.